When people think about rural Australia, they often picture the wide open spaces. But after spending time in communities across South Australia, I've realised something else. Behind every paddock, every main street, every local footy club, there's a story. Some are full of laughter, some carry incredible challenges. But almost all of them remind us of one simple truth: we're better when we stay connected. A few months ago, we were standing outside a country hall after one of our mates' meals and mental health events. The evening had officially finished, but nobody was going home. Small groups were still standing around talking on the car park. One bloke turned to me and said, "You know, we probably spoke more tonight than we have done in the last 6 months." And that stayed with me. It reminded me that sometimes it's not the speaker that changes people, it's the conversation that follows.
This is a safe space where the silence speaks, where the truth can breathe, and you finally see no shame.
This episode is proudly brought to you by Catapult Wealth. Peace of mind starts with planning ahead. Catapult Wealth understands that financial uncertainty can affect your well-being. That's why their financial and succession planning services are designed to provide clarity, confidence, and security for you and your loved ones. Whether you're protecting your family, your business, or your legacy, Catapult Wealth can help make difficult conversations easier so you can focus on what matters most today and into the future. Visit www.catapultwealth.com.au. Today, we're joined by two exceptional people who are giving back to their rural communities and championing the health and well-being of Australian farmers. Our first guest is Justine Drew, Recovery Manager at the South Australian Department of Primary Industries and Regions. Justine leads initiatives in the department's emergency management, drought and resilience branch that supports farmers and primary industries through natural disasters, drought, and other significant challenges, such as biosecurity outbreaks. Living rurally in Naracoorte, she's also actively involved in supporting local causes and is deeply passionate about the strength and well-being of regional communities. We're delighted to have Justine with us to share her insights on resilience, connection, and the importance of supporting mental health in rural Australia. Our second guest shares that same passion for giving back and strengthening rural communities. Please welcome Ben Wundersitz, or Wundy, co-founder and board director of Fat Farmers. Ben is a fifth-generation farmer from South Australia's Yorke Peninsula, a co-founder of Fat Farmers and a tireless and dedicated board director. Deeply passionate about supporting others, Ben encourages rural Australians to prioritise their health and well-being. He champions Fat Farmers as a force for positive change, helping people become more active, improve their mental health, and build resilience through the power of community. His commitment is reflected in his 14 years with the Maitland Group and his regular participation in events across the country. In 2025, Ben was named South Australian's Grain Producer of the Year and received national recognition at the inaugural Bush Champions ceremony, where Prime Minister Anthony Albanese presented him with an Ag Champion and Overall Champion honours.
Thank you for joining us.
It's pretty exciting, I think, John. Should be good fun.
Yeah, it's great, Wundy. And Justina, thank you for joining us. You're not quite in the studio with us, but thank you for joining us online.
No, thank you for accommodating the regional location.
No, absolutely beautiful. I've got a set of questions I'd love to start with, if that's okay. And I think when we were sort of prepping and planning, I offered the opportunity of who was going to answer first. And Wundy was very gracious and said, "Justina, please."
Very fast.
Which is very, very, fast. So apparently it's the fastest handball he's ever done. So Justina, we'd love you to help us set the scene. So when we sort of think about and talk about rural South Australia, what immediately comes to our mind on how we describe that?
Well, I guess, John, I've answered this just from a personal perspective.
Yeah.
For me, it's about the space and community. I think for me, I love the wide open spaces and the connection to landscapes and nature in particular. So whether that's farmland or bushland or the coastal areas or desert country, the outdoors and the open spaces are good for me. The other aspect of that is community, and I think I guess living in one, and same as Wundy, the strength of our regional communities across the whole state, you just see that everywhere. People investing in their towns and their communities, supporting their local organisations. I think the other sense of community is around just belonging and shared responsibility as well, and I think that's a pretty special thing for living in the country as well.
Is that what sort of makes it so special then for you, that those three connections? So what you see, what you feel, and then how you help each other?
That's a really nice way to put it. I think the combination of the connection and service, and I think they sort of feed each other a bit like what you've just described there. In smaller communities, people are more likely to know each other or be connected in some way. So whether that's going to the supermarket and taking 3 hours there because you run into 10 people, whether it's the fact that you know your butcher and your baker and your chemist by name and they know you, I think that creates a sense of accountability and care as well, that we are also connected. And I think that then feeds into the sense of service and the fact that we've got higher rates of volunteering in regional areas, and most people or many people are likely to be involved in a community group or a service group, whether that's coaching sport or local committees, and helping with events or participating in emergency responses.
Yeah, that's beautiful. Yeah, that's beautiful. It is that part around how that community sort of brings you together, but also provides that connection, especially at a time when we're talking around crisis times, which, obviously it's a big part of the work that you do of how you sort of help navigate that sort of journey. Ben, in your area, you live on the York Peninsula, and so, what's your community like?
Well, I think I perhaps take the landscape a bit for granted as a farmer, because you've sort of never known any different, and I've never really lived in a city. So, love that, exactly as Justine said. But probably the thing for me is the people. Yeah. The people are just so special. There's, hardworking certainly comes to mind, resilient, and incredibly generous. And that's probably the thing that I notice when I spend time in the city, is just everyone in the country is looking out for each other. They're generous with their time, they're generous with everything, really, and probably sometimes when there's not much to give. And and I think just looking out for one another, really, that's probably it's the people that really get me, and just that connection.
Yeah, and do you both see that difference between country life and then coming into the city? Do you see a distinct difference there?
Justine, do you want to have a crack?
Nice one, Wundy. I do.
He's getting good at it, isn't he?
Yeah, another good handball. I grew up in Adelaide, but I moved down here in my early 20s, and I think now I certainly see it and feel it. I travelled to Adelaide a lot for work. And people in Adelaide are lovely, and all my friends and family and colleagues there are great, but it is a different thing in terms of that sort of knowing each other at a local level. And it's not to say that there aren't communities in big cities that don't have that. There's lots of places where that does happen, but certainly I'm very happy to leave the city and come home most times.
I wonder, what do you think it is that causes that difference between being in a rural area and being in the city, that causes that sort of disconnect between community? I don't know the answer to that, but
no, it's interesting. It's obviously I come from the northwest of England, and when a northerner goes down to London, we say hello to everybody and we make eye contact, and we're quite chatty. Yet down in London, no one makes eye contact. If you go on the tube, no one talks to each other. It's all very quiet. It's all very insular and stuff. So, but I've not necessarily seen that disconnect here when you come into Adelaide. People do say hello, do talk, etc. But I noticed that much stronger when I go out into the rural community groups. That, everyone wants to stop, everyone wants to have a chat. They're really interested in you, or they're curious of why you're here and what you're wanting to do as well. So, do you find that, Wendy, then from the work you've been doing and obviously living out on a farm, and that's the business, but then the connection in your community?
Yeah, I think probably getting back to the city, probably what I notice, and we've had children living in Adelaide and we spent quite a lot of time down here, is I think a lot of people in cities actually crave that connection, to be honest.
Absolutely.
And, so we'll go and look to meet all our neighbours and say good day, and when we're down here we tend to go to the same coffee shop, and now we've got a real group of friends, and some of them are quite young and some are quite old, but we look for that connection. That's just what we do, because they're the people we are. And I know some of our neighbours, they'll say to me, I've never met the neighbours, but to us that's just normal. So it is quite different. Yeah.
And so if you were to sort of like describe to someone who, why do I live in the country? What's your answer for that? Why do you live there?
Well, I suppose I was born into it, really. Yeah. So you probably live there because that's all you know, and and being a generational farmer, that's just what it was. But like Justine, that's the only place I really want to live. Yeah,
yeah. And from that perspective, then that's where you live, that's where you work. The role you've had within your farm and your community has been incredibly impactful. I was reading a beautiful article about you last night, and it was just so glowing, mainly around the very humble nature of you and how you connect with people. What are some of the sort of like the highlights of things you've been most proud of with the way in which you've navigated some of those uncertainties?
I'm probably that person. I was educated to year 12, but I openly say I only know what I know. So I've really. My wife, Belle's amazing, and she probably keeps me on track and keeps me focused. But whatever we've done, I've always tried to surround myself with good people. And I think that's something that, especially, when you're in areas that you're not quite comfortable, and I'm good at communication. I do it pretty well. And so I suppose finding those people that have the answers can help you get the answers and keep you on track, and I'm quite honest, and I expect that of my wife Belle. She's quite honest too, and my friends, because sometimes you're sort of heading in an area that's perhaps not where you should be. So
so that part around again, it goes back to the connection piece, doesn't it? The people around, the people we trust, the people we feel safe with.
Yeah, absolutely.
And at the same time, people that we're confident that if they think we need a little bit of help or are confident to pull us up, in a nice way, obviously.
Yeah.
That's that respectful approach. But there must be other things that from personally yourself, I was, in the article I was reading about the various different awards you've won, the way in which you've led as a community, the way you've been a role model. You're obviously somebody that people want to come towards as well.
Oh, I don't know, I suppose. Yeah, well, maybe. And I suppose, I'm very much grassroots. So, and I'm a pretty simple person, and I've got pretty simple sort of morals, I suppose, and that have sort of come through over the years, and I try to be true to that person, really.
Yeah, and I think a little bit later we're going to chat to how you translated that into the development of the Fat Farmers and the whole initiative there, which is an incredible organisation that's doing some beautiful work within our communities, but also it's become more than that. It's become a sort of like a whole community concept to get behind, to sort of grow, to develop, and as you rightly say, it's based on a wide range of very simple principles. So we'll cover that in a moment, if that's all right with you, Ben.
Yeah.
Justine, I just wanted to have a bit of a chat around your sort of role. You obviously live in the community, you're passionate about the community, but you actually work for your rural community. So you work within PIRSA, and you've travelled across much of South Australia over the last few years, looking at and when you've been able to put strategies in place, or if it's responding to crisis, etc. What's sort of inspired you the most during those travels?
Yeah, look, I think particularly in our work in disaster recovery, it means we see people right across our state. So like I'm based at Narracor, but it's a statewide role. So people are working with us at a pretty bad point in their life. We're seeing them in the worst of their times often, but at the same time, disasters are when we often see the best in people as well. So I'm inspired all the time by how people act in both of those situations on each side of that coin. And as Wendy said, and I think you as well, John, the generosity and courage and compassion from individuals and businesses and entire communities is pretty amazing when that's sort of happening. And in our role, being able to help people in need and support others who are helping others is part of what we do as well. So, we've had some pretty big events in recent years, some of the biggest floods and fires and droughts that we've seen in a long time. So the recovery efforts there at community and government level have been enormous, and many of those communities have been hit by multiple of those events that have just sort of stacked on. So it's been a long path to recovery. So, the inspiring bit in that is that despite all of that, people keep moving forward. They keep supporting each other. They do adapt to changing circumstances and keep contributing to their community in amongst all of that. So that determination and the care for other people is something I never stop admiring in our communities.
Yeah, that's beautiful. I mean, PIRSA have been incredible in their response to a number of different crises here for South Australia, and both Breakthrough and the Fat Farmers organisations have received funding as part of the sort of drought recovery work, which, one, we're incredibly grateful because that means we can continue to do the work we do, and from our perspective it's very much around building within the community and building the skills. We often hear the word, though, resilience thrown around in those areas, and I know from my conversations in across South Australia, our farming community are asking us to not necessarily use that term, and why do you think it carries a little bit of weight to it? Just Ben, what do you think the issue is for that?
Oh, look, I think we've always had resilience as a quality in people, but I suppose being a generational farmer, there's an element that carries really that that you're hard, you're tough, but probably when things aren't going so well, you don't share, and in a way, a lot of people have sort of worn that resilience as a badge of honour, whereas when things start getting pretty tough, that will inherently start to work against you.
Yeah, have you seen the same thing, Justine?
Yeah, certainly heard the feedback around, whether it's the right word or not. I mean, I haven't heard a better word, and it's still a really important and relevant concept. I think maybe there's a perception that people think we use it meaning that they have to cope on their own, or that their struggles are somehow dismissed or diminished by using it. It's certainly not the intent from our perspective.
Yeah,
that's not what it's about. It is about recognising what Wendy just said, that it is an inherent capability or characteristic. And it certainly doesn't mean that things aren't hard and that people don't get overwhelmed and exhausted. So I think it's also a complex thing. Like it hasn't got a singular meaning. Meaning. I've just been in a meeting this morning talking about exactly this, and every person has a different kind of set of words that they want to attach to it.
Yeah.
And there's no single way to measure it. So I think it depends on the context. And it changes over time. Like we all know individually, like some days you're feeling a bit tougher than others, and that ebbs and flows at individual level and community level as well. So I think it's a tricky one. Perhaps people are reacting to it because maybe it's been overused, but I don't know what the better word is.
Yeah.
It's still a really important thing.
Yeah, so it's a great reflection, that, Justine, because when you do look at it, it is that here's a skill that I've learned, I've grown, I've developed, and then for other people it's actually a weight. I'm not even resilient, so where do I go now, and how do I manage that? So I think there's depending on where the narrative is, where the conversation is, it seems to alter and change. And as you rightly say, it shouldn't be deemed as a negative concept at all. What we've noticed when we've been doing some of the community sessions then is that it's not necessarily the resilient that's the challenge for people. It's a wide range of things that are probably hidden, that aren't necessarily shared. So there's still those questions around the stigma of putting my hand up, or there's still the things around, well, I'm having to make quite high-level risky decisions, but I don't want to share those with people in case people judge me on the decision I'm trying to make. Or it could be as simple as I just don't know where to go for help at the moment. I'm not sure what to do. What are the things you're seeing, Ben, in your community that aren't necessarily obvious to everybody else?
In terms of how they're dealing
with that crisis at the moment, or what's actually happening for them?
Look, I think that it's actually quite complex, because depending on what the crisis is, it really depends on your level of involvement. And a lot of people outside of country areas might not realise that, normally as a volunteer role, a lot of us are involved with CFS and firefighting.
Yep.
You could be involved in the ambulance or emergency services. So when something goes wrong, depending on what it is, there's a huge buy-in, and not only with the impact it might be having on your property or those around you, but you're actually also involved in the response. So it's pretty tough, and I think we are getting. Well, I think a lot of the agencies, be it PIRSA or CFS, there's more people coming on to sort of help out in those crisis times. But probably for me, it's more of the smaller crisis where you don't really get much assistance. But I think we are. We are opening those doors. It's becoming more common. Mental health 20 years ago just wasn't spoken about, whereas, now both physical and mental health are sort of becoming front of mind. So, and I think the one thing that we're trying to learn really is when you're in a position of power and you don't have a crisis, but they're always that you can always reach out to someone else, and if you sort of use that for your own mental health, to actually reach out to someone else and say, look, I know you're doing it tough, whether it's drought or you've had a fire or whether it's a family incident, and I think the more people we can educate, the more it's just part of your normal dialogue that you're looking out for everybody else. And I think then it makes that conversation, well, look, I'm doing it a bit tough, a lot easier. Yeah. And Justine, are you seeing that from, obviously, the strategy you've been involved in and leading on behalf of the state, and you've done it in an incredible way, so thank you. But are you seeing those sort of narratives as well? We are seeing that shift and change. There's been some beautiful programs that have been promoting that.
Yeah, definitely. As Wendy said, it is complex what's going on underneath it. I think a lot of people see the news reports, with the very graphic images and things of what might be happening in a fire or a flood or a drought, but don't necessarily understand what that actually means for the affected people, businesses and communities. So, the immediate trauma and loss that happens as a direct result of the event, and then that flows into the emotional toll that comes from the uncertainty, the financial pressures, being able to kind of, make good decisions when you're in that sort of state of overwhelm, I suppose, and concern for your family and your livestock and other animals. So there is a lot of, put a brave face on and keep going. And for farmers in particular, and I don't want to speak for Wendy, but, that I can imagine the huge sense of responsibility that, they're not only running a business there, they're looking after the land, the livestock, there's family heritage and future generation stuff there. So, they're all underlying things underneath, a major event like a disaster like that. So Wendy touched on the sort of response and recovery workers as well. So, there's impacts there. Also, like in PIRSA, we have staff that run our hotlines that are taking calls from disaster impacted people. We've got our grant management team who receive the applications and have to support the people with their stories of what's happened to them and how they need help. So looking after the people who are helping as well is a key thing there. But certainly, particularly as you said, in this drought response in the last 18 months or so, it's probably one of the biggest mental health and wellbeing commitments that we've had in a response package for a long time. I mean, it has been a statewide program, so that is big in itself. But yeah, it's certainly getting better.
Yeah. So when we think about, our regional communities and when, they are going through a difficult time, such as whether it's drought or bushfires or any of those things, what do you think it is that's stopping people from reaching out for that help? Justine, I'll go to you.
I think sometimes people don't realise what help is out there, or they assume that it won't help them. There's certainly still stigma, and Ben touched on that just before, the whole resilience badge and you can't be seen to be needing help. Quite often people are just overwhelmed and they don't even know where to start. So when you're dealing with the sort of complexity of pressures that happen in an event, finding the energy to make a phone call or even just, find the piece of paper that someone handed you that has a helpline on it or whatever, can feel really tricky. So that's why I think trusted people and trusted services matter so much, particularly in regional areas. And usually all it takes is someone just listening and helping to break things down into the manageable steps to sort of help with that overwhelm. So to connect people to, with the right support as well, understanding what they actually need, not making assumptions about that. And for a shameless plug, that's exactly what our family and business support mentors are about. They're local people out in the regions that are there to do exactly that. And that's a free service for regional people to just help them find their way through a challenging time and connect them with the right support.
That's beautiful. And would you like to add anything to that, Wendy?
Well, I think the other thing, just to ground truth it all a bit, is probably what's happened in a lot of rural communities. We had, reasonable sized towns, well resourced, and so that would put health professionals in the town, that would put a banker in the town, a reasonable amount of GPs. But as things have shrunk and, potentially properties have got bigger and banks have rationalised, now it's very important to have people coming in from outside, and that's probably Justine putting it together, and that's breakthrough coming out after an event. So it really has fundamentally changed that the services that were perhaps there was quite a lot of services sort of in rural communities, whereas now we seem to, with the lack of people, the lack of services, mental health support, it's really quite important that we make it available and take it to the regions, because it's inherently often not there.
Yeah.
So,
yes, it's interesting that shift and change of what community was and how it pulses and changes over time, doesn't it, as well? So, and I think that's often a challenge, especially for a service like Breakthrough that come into a community, and everywhere we've been made to feel very, very welcome. So that's been a wonderful feeling. But we're always very conscious that when we go, what happens behind that, and how do you sort of continue to grow and how to continue those connections. One of the beautiful things that we as part of the PIRSA funding, we facilitate the mates meals and mental health dinner. And we've had some incredible turnouts of these events, from anything from 50 to 100 people coming to them. And I always found that fascinating when people say, we've been posing some questions, how do you get through to a community? When 100 people of your community turn up, then they're wanting to connect, they're wanting to carry on, they're wanting to grow, they're wanting to develop, which has been beautiful. And the Mates programme is around bringing people together for a dinner, and then we very subtly deliver a range of sort of mental health messages. We have a couple of guest speakers. We have a beautiful comedian, Mark Ryan, the beautiful Bogan, tells his own narrative through his comedy, and it just takes people on a journey over a few hours. what we learned though from it was a little bit of some of the gaps that happen afterwards, or how do you carry on the conversation, and how do you grow that? And we had a session in partnership with the Fat Farmers, and we followed up the mate session with a walk and talk session, and from it we developed these walk and talk cards. Now the reason we would develop the cards was we realised that people are happy to go for the walk, but once they've got asked the "Are you okay?" and "What have you done this morning?" and then they're like trying to ponder, what other questions could we actually ask? So we sat and we chatted to a group and said, if you were to find out more and more about your friendship group, what might that look like, and what skills are? And there are lots of beautiful conversation cards that have been developed out there. But we developed this set that were purely from a farming perspective, and we've got a pack for both of you. But we also thought we might ask you 2-3 of the questions just to find out a little bit more, because we sit here and we're all very professional, aren't we? We've got our Persa hat on and we've got our Fat Farmer hat on, but actually who actually is Wundy and who actually is Justine? And so if you're comfortable, Lisa's got 3 questions she'd like to ask you. We know that Ben's going to say that Justine's going to go first.
So then we should go to Ben first.
So we go
I'm going to throw a spanner in the works. So the very first question that I have for you is, what do you like most about yourself?
I think probably my core values came from somewhere, and I'm pretty honest, I'm pretty down to earth. I think it's a quality. I've got an amazing work ethic that just is, that's pretty significant. So I like getting stuff done. I've probably had my parents really, so I think I and through being a farmer, I know how to problem solve, and so that's always handy. And then I enjoy sharing that with people. So so it doesn't really matter whether it's family farming or community or fat farmers. I'm always up for a chat, and this is what I've learnt in my experience, be it self-taught. So I think that's probably it for me.
I love that. I think that's the beautiful qualities, and to be able to recognise them in yourself as well is really lovely. The little follow-on to that is that what you've always liked most about yourself, or do you think that's changed over time?
Well, I think you evolve as a person, and you never stop learning. So, I think that's developed over time, and I'm really lucky. My wife Belle's she's on it, and so it's great to have someone that's in your corner. Not only is she an amazing mother, she's, she pretty much sort of, she provided our income for the first 5 years we got home on the farm, because we just had a small farm. So, and I just think having that partnership at home is just so important. Yeah.
Having that other person there in your corner too.
Yeah, correct.
Very good. Lovely. Well done. So, Justine, I'm going to go to you for the next question. So, who has been the biggest influence on the person that you've become?
There's many, but it's probably my dad, and whether that's just a daddy-daughter thing or not, I'm not sure. He was the one that sort of took us camping and being active outdoors on the little hobby block we had when I was growing up. A bit like what Ben said, he would encourage me to work hard and pursue whatever path that genuinely interested me, rather than following any, expectations around that. I think his sense of humour is also rubbed off on me, and that's a big part of who I am now as well. But, both my parents encouraged, kindness, and gave me a strong sense that I could achieve whatever I wanted to if I was prepared to put in the effort, and you just sort of go forward with that without realising perhaps that's been a really important influence.
And I think those early influences in our life, they play such a pivotal role, like our parents or the people who are around us when we're young. And so that's beautiful to listen to you speak to your dad and the way that he influenced you like that. It's very lovely. So if someone who cared about you was sitting here, what would they say that you're really good at? And I'll come back to you, Ben. What would they say? Someone who loves you, cares about you, they're sitting here right here in the podcast studio with us. What would they say you're really good at?
Oh, well, I suppose they'd say hopefully pretty decent sort of bloke who's perhaps, I don't know, worked hard and potentially, I don't know, I think as a farmer you always want a bit of a legacy to, leave the farm better than you found it. And I suppose when you work in community, you hope that's the same, really, and whether it's on industry or fat farmers or whatever it is, I think if you can say, well, I reckon I've done my bit and left it better than it was or the best it can be, that's probably as good as it gets, really, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. And I have no doubt that there would be many, many people out there that would have those words to say about you.
Not sure.
I think so. Justine, what about you?
I think that they would say that I get stuff done, whether that's at work or socially. I really like to, complete what we start and drive new things. And whether that's, a holiday with friends or just the latest project at work, I get a great sense of satisfaction from starting and completing things. And physical challenges is probably the other thing that they would comment on. I'm always trying to talk someone into a trek or an obstacle course or something like that. So, those couple of things.
That's lovely. I think you and I would get along very well because I think we've got some very similar qualities there.
I think, Justina, we need to, if you like a good trek, we need to get you on our Kokoda trek one year.
Yeah, well, no, you've told me about that, John, and I'm not sure about that. So,
New York next year?
Well, we can always find a challenge for you.
Sure.
Ben, this wasn't one of the questions, but you've spoken about your wife, Belle, a number of times already today. So she's obviously really influential for you and there's been that support. If Belle was sitting here and she said, do you want to really know about Wundy? What would she say?
Oh, I don't know. She might be a bit frustrated, maybe. Yeah, I don't know. We've had to push pretty hard over the years, and I suppose, there's times she'd probably say that I've been a bit absent, and there's times I've been okay. So, but it's a lot of it's sort of a lot of hard work So.
And I remember listening to you at an event, and you were starting to share the story of where fat farmers came from. And I love the comment that it was not necessarily fat farmers, it was a bit of motivation from a set of wives who were getting fed up with snoring. And what we needed to do about it.
That's fact. Yeah, that's
Which
a
is
fact,
isn't it?
Yeah. And all three of us were snoring, and and I was. I don't want to speak out of school, but the other two lads might have sort of had sleep apnea in it, whereas the doctor just said to me, "Go and lose some weight." So that's probably correct. Yeah.
Probably is. So tell us more about fat farmers. A lot of our listeners may have read about you or heard just little bits, but this is an idea that came from three guys wanting to do something different and wanting to make a difference. Tell us the story.
Oh well, we just went to the gym, and I suppose, 12 years ago in a rural country town, that's not what males did, and there was 50 females in the local gym and not one male, and I suppose one went to three, and we just thought, wow, and 3 weeks in, we stopped puffing at work, and that whole link between physical exercise and better mental health, and it's a simple link, but we'd certainly forgotten it. And I think, just that whole thing of teamwork, if you'd played team sport. And we started inviting people and they wouldn't come. So we started having a barbecue on the footpath of all things. And, and eventually, a few years down the track, we had sort of, 40 blokes coming to the gym, and, then I thought, well, wouldn't it be great to share it? And I was lucky to have a couple of amazing ladies that helped me take it forward, and and today we've got 40 fat farmers fitness groups, and post the integration with active farmers, that's 80. So pretty simple, and I think a name that was just so cringeworthy, and it's created that much. It's created discussion. It's created conflict. But we were really just talking about ourselves, and you don't have to be fat. You don't have to be a farmer. It's just getting together, and I didn't ever think we'd create this sense of community. And one thing that you mentioned earlier, John, that resonated with me is there's often been mental health speakers travelling, and that's been one of the great things that we've done. And now our CEO, Richard Sheppy, is this collaboration. And so we'd have a mental health speaker come to Maitland, and we'd get 150 people. And they said, we've just come from somewhere and we got 3. And I think that sort of trusting, cringeworthy name, and, you said when you went to Loxton, you pulled in a heap of people. And I think that's where that collaboration works so well, because you offer amazing programs that we don't. And, but if we can attract the crowd at trusting us, and then it opens up, a whole world with you. And probably now, and I'm sure Justine is now we're becoming post-COVID so much more connected, and there's probably a generation that was left behind, but our generation's taking it on. So, yeah.
Yeah, I loved one of the sessions I was doing. I was doing one of the mate sessions, and it was out in Mantung. And one of the things that's part of the work that Justine's been driving is to try and make sure that each of the programs that are going out are actually connecting all the other programs, and so the community understand that if we go, or Fat Farmers go, or I Farm Well, that this is all interconnected. And I'd done some slides, and I got them a Fat Farmer slide up there, and I'd done my research, and I said I want to make sure I get the right dot points. And then I'm just about to start the presentation, and I look up, and Richard Sheppy, your CEO, is in the audience. And so I'd done this whole thing around 5 signs and what to look out for. And then I just said to Richard, my next piece is going to be sharing is around, well, what can we do about them? What about the exercise and the programs? And I wanted to share about Fat Farmers. And Richard's here, and do you want to come and actually chat to the guys and stuff? So he got up, and he was so beautiful, because he said, well, actually, before I do start, I want to share that the 5 signs that of mental distress was me a few years ago, and this is what I had to do about it. But then this is the impact that Fat Farmers had on those 5 signs for me. The way I started to get regular exercise, the way I started to look at my sleep, the way I started to look at my diet, etc. And so I think from a chance opportunity, all of a sudden the collaborations have grown and grown and grown. And I think it is lovely when we get the chance to go out and do programs together, because then people make those connections and they realise that actually this is one narrative, but it's from different people, but coming together to deliver it. Fat Farmers, though, isn't just that. You've got your health hub as well, so you're looking at all that wider work. That you must be so proud of the health hub.
Yeah, well, that's probably something that is front and centre for me. I lost my dad last year to prostate cancer. I lost my grandpa to prostate cancer. I've just had half my nose cut off with this pasty white skin from a skin cancer. So, and I just thought, wouldn't it be great to be able to not only keep people fit and healthy, but keep them alive. So, and particularly, and I love our local health services, but it is skinny. People are tough. And so I just thought if we could take basic health screening to the bush. And so that was sort of, for me, stage 2 of Fat Farmers was to find this medical trailer, get it fitted out, and then start doing start travelling with this 19-metre semi-trailer. It's amazing. I think we've done 800 health checks in 6 months. Tough.
And that's 800 people who wouldn't have accessed them.
Oh, without doubt. And, and I don't hear the exact figures, but, I'll hear the Rosemary Bryant Foundation, they found 3 melanomas one morning, and they had a cocky walk in, and, I'm a bit tight in the chest, and things are terrible, and it's about to have a heart attack. And, and you just... that's just saving people's lives. And and I think we all know it's tough to fund it. Everything's expensive, but I probably knew that Fat Farmers if we had 2 things to our bow, the chances of us surviving and thriving would be a lot better. And and I think if you can we've had life-saving outcomes with the fitness groups, and now to be able to save their life medically is good.
So with the Health Hub, that's just South Australia that goes out to?
Mainly South Australia, but
yeah.
we've been into Victoria, and I think we're going to do the field day circuit if we can into Victoria, maybe New South Wales.
Yeah. So if maybe someone's listening and they are living in a regional area, how could they find out, like maybe when you might be in town next, or what the schedule is, or how they could access it?
I'm pretty sure there's a schedule on the website for farmers.com.au. So, yeah, or just reach out really, and unfortunately at the moment we're not completely funded to do everything. So often I think getting a bit of notice, and perhaps if they can find a bit of grant funding for some of the testing, and eventually we hope we can sort of have it all funded, and you can just hop in the truck and go. We're just not quite there yet.
Yeah.
That's brilliant. I mean, Justine, from your perspective, why is the community connection, why is looking at bringing various different organisations together been important for PIRSA?
Well, I think it's just grounded in science even. That connection is one of the best protective factors we can have just in our everyday life, as we've already talked about, as well as in times of disaster. So, we're just looking to, support and strengthen that existing safety net, if you like. That's probably a good word. And I think when people are connected, not only supports their own well-being, it then means that they're more likely to be able to notice when someone that they know is struggling. They're more likely or more able to offer help, and maybe in a better place to know where to point people for some of that as well. So, we in the disaster recovery work that we do, we talk a lot about the financial assistance and programs, and that's really critical. But the strong relationships, I think, is what gets people through the toughest times. And communities that recover best are always those where people have stayed connected and continued showing up for each other. So if we can offer programs that support that, like Wendy just said, a bit of grant money here and there for the Health Hub. So, PIRSA is really pleased to be hosting the Health Hub at our site at both the Cleve Field Days coming up and the Riverland Field Days. So that's a couple of upcoming things there. But also some of the other just sort of community social events and things that lets the community put on something that makes sense to them and is going to be useful for them, and just keep people together that way. We've just seen it time and time again, and it's one of the things that we get the most sort of positive feedback about in what's been meaningful for people and what's made a difference.
That's beautiful. I'm really conscious that we're running out of time, and the conversation's been beautiful, and I'd love to do a part 2, what actually happens after this, which I think may be wonderful. We always ask one last question. I think Leesa's got it ready for everybody.
Yes, so we have a closing tradition on this podcast, obviously being called a safe space. So we would love to know from each of you, where is your safe space?
Well, it's in the outdoors, I think, and I panic bought a caravan during COVID. It's just a little sort of camper van type thing, but going anywhere in the outdoors, whether it's in the forest sort of down the road from here, or whether it's over at the beach or out in the desert country, being outside in my little caravan makes me very happy.
Oh, that's beautiful. It sounds lovely. I think a lot of people did that during COVID as well. So a bit of panic buying, a bit of, any ways to be outside and enjoy the environments. That sounds lovely. And yourself?
Oh, look, we do have a beach shack, and I think that's probably it for me, is just a bit of beach time and, get away with Belle, and potentially if the kids can come home. Yeah, so I think probably the beach does it for me. Yeah. Pretty simple.
Yeah. Again, that salt water, fresh air, the sunshine sounds great to me.
It sounds like you've got 2 new friends here.
I know. I'm coming on a caravan. I'm coming straight to the beach shack. I can tell you that much.
Thank you guys for joining us today. Thank you for being so honest. I know that sometimes coming into a podcast and sharing, we put our professional hats on, but then when we ask about ourselves, sometimes that can be a bit of a challenge to do. But you've been beautiful to listen to. So thank you for your honesty and your generosity today.
Thank you for having us.
No, thanks for having us. I'd be up for part 2. I still had a bit more I wanted to say.
I reckon we lock in part 2 a little bit later.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Thanks, guys. Really appreciate it.
Thank you both.
Good.
Thank you.
Thank you for spending this time with us on A Safe Space, the Breakthrough Podcast. If this conversation touched you, inspired you, or made you feel a little bit less alone, please share it with someone who might need to hear it too. And be sure to follow the show so you can join us for future conversations. Every episode helps us continue supporting mental health research and creating spaces where people can be heard, helped, hugged, and offered hope. As we close, we'll leave you with this thought. What is your safe space? Take a moment to reflect on it, hold on to it, and may you carry that feeling of safety, strength, and hope with you until we meet again. Thank you for listening.
This is a safe space